My name is Viola Blake, and when I was 28, I learned that love can destroy you quietly long before it breaks you loudly. Back then, I was a mid-level analyst at a consulting firm in a mid-sized city. Nothing glamorous, but it paid the bills and gave me stability. I used to think that being stable was a good thing, something a man would value. I was wrong. I met Jacob in college. He was magnetic in that effortless way, always chasing new ideas, always sure he was destined for more. When he looked at me, I felt seen, like I'd been chosen from the crowd. We dated through graduation, through his early jobs that came and went like weather through every big idea that would surely make him successful this time. He was the dreamer, I was the anchor. And anchors don't move, they hold everything steady even as the storm batters them. 5 years in, I'd turned down a relocation offer that could have doubled my income. Jacob had said, "We need to build our life here first. You can chase the fancy stuff later." I believed him. I told myself that love meant teamwork. I paid the rent when his consulting startup folded. I covered groceries, even his credit card bill a few times. It's temporary, I'd say, though deep down I wasn't sure. He called me his safe place, and I wore that like a medal until it started sounding like a cage. It happened slowly, first the teasing, then the subtle dismissals. "You're so routine, Viola," he'd laugh, scrolling through Instagram. "Look at people actually living. Don't you ever get bored of spreadsheets and meal prep?" I'd smile it off, but every laugh carved something out of me. Then came the late nights, networking events that didn't end till 2 a.m. Phones flipped screen down messages he wouldn't explain. I told myself not to be paranoid. That's what love does. It excuses what logic would condemn. One Thursday night, I came home early with takeout and wine. I wanted to surprise him, to talk, maybe bridge the quiet distance that had settled between us. The lights were dim. His coat was on the hook. And from the bedroom came laughter, a woman's laughter. My fingers went numb. I remember walking, not running, as if slowness could change what I was about to see. When I pushed the door open, the world froze. Jacob was there, bare skin, tangled sheets, and a stranger beside him. For a heartbeat, nobody moved. Then he had the nerve to look irritated. "Viola, what are you doing home so early?" As if I had done something wrong. I couldn't speak at first. Just a whisper. "What's going on?" He sighed, exasperated, like explaining a simple math problem. "Okay, fine. You caught me. But let's be real, this has been coming for a while." The girl later I'd learn her name was. Melissa smirked and started dressing without shame. She brushed past me with a half laugh. "Guess I'll leave you two to talk." When the door closed behind her, Jacob sat on the edge of the bed, completely unbothered. "Viola, you've changed. You've become so predictable. You don't challenge me anymore. Melissa gets it. She's ambitious, fiery. You've gotten comfortable. Comfortable. As if love should always feel like a chase instead of a choice." "So you're cheating because I'm not exciting enough," I managed. He shrugged. "You're safe, but I need more than safe. I need a woman who pushes me forward, not one who holds me down." I wanted to scream, to throw something, to demand how paying his bills and believing in him was holding him down. But all I said was, "If that's what you need, Jacob, then go find it." He blinked, surprised. "That's it. No drama, no begging." I shook my head, my voice steady even as my heart cracked. "No, you already made your choice. I'm just stepping out of your way." He scoffed, pulling on a shirt. "You'll regret this. You'll never find someone who loves you like I did." I looked at him, then really looked, and realized I never wanted to be loved like that again. When the door shut behind me, the night air hit my face like ice. My hands were trembling, my chest hollow. But beneath the pain was something else, an ember of clarity. For years, I'd built my world around a man who believed love was a competition he needed to win. That night, I stopped competing. I didn't know it yet, but walking away from him wasn't the end of the story. It was the quiet beginning of the woman I was about to become. The night I left Jacob, I didn't have a plan. Just a duffel bag, a drained bank account, and the dull echo of his words, "You're not enough." I spent that first night on my friend Maya's couch, staring at the ceiling until morning bled through the blinds. I kept hearing the laughter from that bedroom, her laugh Melissa's haunting and smug. It wasn't just betrayal, it was humiliation, the kind that stains your reflection for weeks. Maya found me in the kitchen around sunrise, clutching a cold cup of tea, like it could anchor me. "You need to eat something," she said softly. I shook my head. "I just need to forget." But forgetting never starts that easily. In the days that followed, I moved mechanically. I terminated the lease, forwarded. Jacob's mail blocked his number, deleted our photos. But no matter how many things I erased, memories still clung like smoke. The way he once smiled when I said something nerdy, the way I'd believed every promise he made. A week later, I stood in the middle of my new apartment, a tiny studio, overlooking a cracked parking lot, and let the silence wrap around me. For the first time in years, it was my space. Mine. It smelled like dust and cardboard boxes, but I could breathe. I made lists. It's what I do when life collapses. Lists gave me the illusion of control. Cancel shared bank account. Call HR about relocation. Buy curtains. Don't cry. But I cried anyway sometimes over nothing. The sound of his old playlist, a mug he left behind, the smell of his cologne on my jacket. The grief wasn't for him, not really. It was for the version of me who believed stability could buy love. Weeks blurred together. I went to work, smiled politely, and lied when people asked if I was okay. At night, I journaled. My first entry was simple. He called me safe. Maybe safety isn't weakness. Maybe it's the start. Somewhere between the sleepless nights and quiet mornings, I began to change. I reactivated my gym membership, the same one I'd canceled when Jacob said we needed to cut costs. The first day back, I nearly quit after 10 minutes on the treadmill. But as sweat dripped down my face, something shifted. The rhythm of my breath reminded me that I still existed beyond heartbreak. Then a miracle disguised as an email arrived, a job posting from a firm in Riverside, a nearby city. The same position I'd once turned down for him, only now the role was higher senior analyst. The irony made me laugh. That night I updated my resume for the first time in 3 years. 2 weeks later they called. I nailed the interview. Maybe it was the exhaustion. Maybe it was the new steel in my voice. But I spoke like a woman who had stopped apologizing for wanting more. When the offer letter arrived, I printed it out and pinned it to my fridge. A small victory, but it felt monumental. Maya came over with cheap champagne to celebrate. To fresh starts she toasted. I clinked my glass weakly. Fresh starts built from ashes. She smiled. Even ashes can bloom if you let them. That night I unpacked my last box of photo album from college. I flipped through our old pictures, Jacob and I smiling, young and certain. For the first time, I didn't cry. I simply closed the book and placed it on the highest shelf out of reach. Then I walked to the window. The city lights shimmered below, and somewhere in that noise I heard my own quiet pulse again. Maybe I'm not too safe, I whispered. Maybe I'm just steady enough to rebuild. I didn't know it then, but that calm acceptance was dangerous for him. Because peace, once found, is something no manipulator can take back. By the time autumn rolled around, I had begun to live again. The kind of living that didn't revolve around someone else's chaos. Mornings meant coffee by the window gym before work, new projects that actually challenged me. No more tiptoeing around fragile egos. I'd been in Riverside for nearly 4 months when the first whisper of Jacob reached me. It came through, Maya casually dropped during brunch. Did you hear she asked, stirring her latte? Jacob's all over social media again. New business, new girlfriend. Looks like he's doing great. I almost laughed. Of course he was. People like Jacob always look like they're doing great until the cracks start showing. Still that night, I found myself scrolling through his public page, curiosity, winning over caution. There he was, smiling, wide arms slung around a woman in a sleek red dress. Melissa. The caption read, "Big dreams, bigger moves. Hashtag power couple." The comment section was full of heart emojis and words like inspirational. It should have hurt, but it didn't. It just looked fake. Too bright, too curated. Behind that filtered glow, I could almost hear the strain in his smile. Over the next few weeks, I heard more snippets from mutual acquaintances. Jacob and Melissa started a startup consulting thing. Apparently, they're killing it. They hosted this big networking event downtown. She calls him her visionary. I would nod, say something neutral, and change the subject. But late at night, lying in bed, I'd wonder, did he ever look at me that way? Or had I always just been the quiet foundation beneath his ambition? Then, about 2 months later, everything changed again. It started with a text from Maya at 7 a.m. "Girl, you dodged a bomb. Jacob's business is a scam." I frowned, blinking at the screen. "What?" A flurry of messages followed. Apparently, Jacob's company, his so-called consulting agency, wasn't legitimate at all. He and Melissa had been taking investments for an app that never existed. Fancy networking parties, borrowed cars, empty promises. The illusion had finally collapsed. One of his ex-colleagues leaked the truth online. By noon, the comments under his posts had turned from praise to mockery. "Where's the app, Jacob? Refund the investors." Guess being a visionary doesn't pay the rent. The digital downfall spread fast. And in that mess, someone mentioned Melissa had vanished, deleted her accounts, disappeared overnight. Apparently, she'd drained their joint account and taken off. Jacob was left with debt legal threats and a reputation in ruins. When I read that, I didn't feel triumph, just silence. Poetic silence. I remembered that night he'd said I wasn't woman enough for his needs, how he'd praised her fire and ambition. Now his fire had burned him alive. A few days later, a coworker showed me a clip from a local news snippet about fraudulent investment startups. Jacob's name wasn't mentioned directly, but I saw enough to know it was him. My stomach twisted, not with pity, but something colder. Karma isn't loud. It's patient. That night, I sat on my balcony again, watching the city lights flicker. The same balcony where I'd toasted to fresh starts. I whispered to the wind, "You wanted excitement, Jacob. I hope you found it." Then I closed my laptop, poured myself a glass of wine, and went to bed. I slept soundly for the first time in weeks, because for the first time I realized his chaos was no longer my burden to carry. And his fall wasn't my revenge. It was simply his consequence. Little did I know, karma wasn't done yet. He was about to come knocking on my peace. It started on a quiet Sunday night, the kind of peace you don't notice until it's interrupted. I'd just returned from a hike, my phone tucked away on the counter while I made tea. When I finally checked it, there it was. "Jacob, hey Viola. Been thinking about you. Can we talk?" I stared at the screen. My pulse didn't quicken. It barely moved. 6 months ago, that message would have shattered me. Now it just felt like an echo from another life. I didn't reply. 2 days later, another ping. "Jacob, I know I don't deserve a response, but please just hear me out. Melissa scammed me. She disappeared. I lost everything." I read it twice, then locked my phone. It wasn't anger, I felt it was something emptier, detached, like watching a movie I'd already seen. By the end of the week, the messages multiplied. "I made a mistake. You were right about her. You were always the real one, Viola." It was almost comical. The same man who told me I wasn't woman enough for his needs now missed my stability, my calm, my boring. I kept deleting his messages until one night, after 3 missed calls, I listened to a voicemail. His voice cracked between breaths. "Viola, I don't even know where to start. Melissa ruined me. She took my savings, my car, my reputation. Everyone's gone. You're the only one who ever cared. Please, I need someone who understands." For a moment, I could hear the old Jacob, the one I'd once protected from the world. Then I remembered the way he'd looked at me that night. The smug pity. "You hold me back." I deleted the voicemail. A few days later, my phone buzzed again. This time a video call request. I declined it immediately. But curiosity made me peek at his social media, and what I saw made my chest tighten, not from sympathy, but recognition. He looked hollow. The man who once chased light now sat in darkness. The apartment behind him was bare, the walls empty, every ounce of charm stripped away. For a second I almost pitied him. Almost. That evening, I received another message. "Please just coffee. No drama. I just want to talk." I typed a single line back. "No need, Jacob. I wish you well." Then I blocked his number again. I thought that was the end. But endings, I've learned, rarely come when you want them to. A week later, there was a knock at my door, sharp, persistent. Through the peephole, I saw him. Jacob. My breath caught. For a second, I thought maybe he'd changed, that life had humbled him. But the moment he lifted his head, I saw it, that same entitlement just wrapped in exhaustion. I opened the door, a few inches chain still on. "Why are you here?" His eyes were sunken, voice trembling. "I just need to explain, Melissa. She lied about everything. She used me. I thought I was doing the right thing, chasing my dream. But I lost everything, Viola. You're the only one who ever—" I cut him off. "Stop." He blinked, startled. "Don't rewrite history. You didn't lose everything because of her. You lost everything because you refused to see what you already had." He swallowed hard, guilt flickering for just a second before the old defensiveness returned. "You don't understand. I was under pressure. I wanted us to have more. You wanted excitement," I said quietly. "And you got it." Silence stretched. For a moment, the weight of it almost made me feel sorry for him. Then he leaned closer to the door, eyes desperate. "You're really just going to stand there after everything we've been through?" "Yes," I said, because I finally learned that standing still isn't weakness, it's peace. He flinched. Then bitterly, "You're cold now. I thought you were different." I almost smiled. "I am. That's the point." He stared a moment longer, then stepped back. His voice softened. "You'll regret this." "No," I said. "I already did my regretting." When he left, the hallway fell silent again. I closed the door, leaned against it, and exhaled. No tears, no shaking hands, just relief. It wasn't revenge, it wasn't triumph, it was closure knocking and me choosing not to open the door. 3 months passed after that night. 3 months of peace so steady it almost scared me. No messages, no surprises, just work quiet evenings and the kind of calm that feels earned. Then, one Friday morning, my phone buzzed with a number I didn't recognize. It was an email from a mediator. Ms. Blake, we've scheduled your appointment to finalize the joint account and lease settlement with Mr. Jacobs. My chest tightened. I'd almost forgotten that our old apartment lease and savings account were still legally tangled. I'd avoided the paperwork because dealing with him again felt like reopening an old wound. But now it was unavoidable. The meeting was set for Monday morning at a neutral office downtown. I told myself it would be simple sign papers, close the chapter, walk away. Still, that night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying all the versions of me he'd left behind, the girl who believed love meant sacrifice, the woman who cried over an empty bed, the one who nearly mistook survival for strength. They were all ghosts now, and I was finally ready to bury them. Monday. The sky was gray, the kind of muted color that feels like foreshadowing. I arrived early, documents neatly organized in a folder. My new self was punctual, professional, unshakable. Then he walked in. Jacob. He looked smaller somehow. His posture slouched. Hair unkempt, clothes wrinkled. He wasn't the man who once lectured me about ambition. Behind him, an older woman followed briskly. I recognized her from old photos, his mother. The mediator greeted us politely, but before we sat, Jacob spoke. Viola, can we talk privately? Just for a second. His voice was hesitant, cracked around the edges. I didn't answer. The mediator gestured toward the table. Let's begin. As we reviewed the documents, his mother started speaking. Instead, her tone sharp, defensive, the way mothers do when protecting pride. You know, dear Jacob's been through a lot. That woman, Melissa, she ruined him. He's been trying to rebuild, but it's been hard. It would mean a lot if you two could make peace. I kept my eyes on the papers. That's what we're doing, legally. She frowned. No, I mean emotionally. You two had something real. You were good for him. He lost his way. Jacob looked at me, then eyes glistening with that practiced sorrow I'd once mistaken for sincerity. Viola, please. I see everything now. You were the real thing. Melissa used me, turned me into someone I'm not. You always believed in me. We can start again. I took a breath, steady and calm. Jacob, I believed in who you could become, not the man you chose to be. He leaned forward, desperate. People make mistakes. You're stronger than this bitterness. You used to say you didn't give up on people. That was before I realized not everyone deserves a second chance, I said softly. His mother huffed. Forgiveness is what good women do. Don't let pride ruin your heart. That word, good women, hit like a sour taste. For years I'd tried to be that quiet patient, endlessly forgiving. Not anymore. I met her gaze and smiled politely. Then maybe I was never meant to be a good woman. Maybe I was meant to be a whole one. Silence. The mediator cleared his throat. Let's continue with the signatures. I signed my name slow and deliberate. When it was his turn, Jacob's hand trembled. As he passed me the final form, he whispered, Viola, please. Don't walk away like this. I still love you. I looked at him one last time. Jacob, remember the night you told me I wasn't woman enough for your needs? His face fell. I didn't mean that. I was angry. I did, I interrupted. Because that night you were right. I wasn't woman enough for you. But I've become woman enough for myself. I stood, gathered my papers, and nodded to the mediator. We're done here. As I walked out, his mother muttered something about cruelty, about men making mistakes. But I didn't turn back. Outside, the air was cold, sharp, and clean. Every breath tasted like freedom. I didn't need revenge. I didn't need validation. The real victory was walking out of that office without a single piece of me left behind. And for the first time in years, I smiled not because I was moving on from him, but because I'd finally returned to myself. 6 months later. If you had told me I'd wake up every morning with peace instead of panic, I wouldn't have believed you. But there I was, standing barefoot on my small balcony, coffee in hand, watching the sun rise over Riverside, and for once I didn't feel like something was missing. My life wasn't extraordinary by anyone's standards. I worked. I hiked on weekends. I started learning how to paint, again a hobby I'd abandoned, because Jacob once joked that it was too simple. Now my apartment walls bloomed with imperfect brushstrokes and color. It wasn't perfect, neither was I, but it was real. Sometimes I still thought of him. Not often, not painfully, just as a flicker of memory when a familiar song came on, or when I passed a cafe we used to go to. But instead of anger, there was gratitude, because if he hadn't broken me, I would have never learned how to rebuild. I'd even started dating again. His name was Liam, a quiet architect with patient eyes and a laugh that didn't need to be loud to be kind. We met at a charity event my firm sponsored. He asked me questions, not to impress, not to compare, but to listen. It felt foreign, the gentleness of it, the absence of competition. One evening, while we walked by the river, he asked softly, "Do you ever regret it?" The way things ended, I smiled. "No, I regret staying too long, not leaving sooner." He nodded, understanding. No probing, no fixing, just presence. And for the first time, I realized love didn't have to feel like survival. There was one moment that stayed with me. A few weeks later, I stopped by a bookstore near downtown and ran into an old mutual friend. She hesitated, then said, "Did you hear about Jacob?" I shook my head. He left town, filed for bankruptcy. His mom's been trying to sell the old house. For a second, I felt that familiar ache of memory, but it faded almost instantly. "Thanks for telling me," I said simply. As I walked home, the world around me felt brighter somehow, not because he was gone, but because I no longer needed to care. That night, I stood before my bathroom mirror, brushing my hair, and caught my reflection in the warm light. There she was, the woman who had once cried over being not enough. Now her eyes were steady, clear, whole. I thought about everything I'd lost and everything I'd gained. Peace instead of performance, solitude instead of chaos, and the quiet truth that no one could ever again define my worth. Before bed, I opened my journal, the same one that once held pages of heartbreak. This time, I wrote just one line. He said I wasn't woman enough, but maybe I was never meant to be woman enough for him, only for myself. I closed the notebook, turned off the lamp, and lay there listening to the hum of the city below. Outside, the world moved on. Inside, I finally had too.